Welcome to State Sports News. We have some breaking news for you right now from the footballing world. Amazingly, an insane transfer decision has been made across the 5 major European leagues. Essentially, from the 2019-2020 season, every single footballing side in the top division in those leagues will be placed into a transfer embargo, and this will last until the culmination of the 2033-34 season. In other words, all of the clubs in the top 5 major European leagues will be placed under an embargo that will last 15 years. Supposedly, the plan here is to ease financial burdens on these clubs and help prevent any unnecessary spending from these clubs during this period. But hang on though, what happens to the clubs then that get promoted to league, or those that get relegated? What happens then?
Well, the embargoes stay in place.
So you're just telling me that if a club gets promoted from the leagues below, they won't have an embargo, so they can buy and sell however they please, but all the other clubs in the leagues can't. And if any club gets relegated from those leagues with the embargo, they still have it in place. So they join a league then where everyone can buy players except them.
Pretty much.
Seems a little bit unfair, doesn't it? Have they not missed that maybe?
Maybe, I mean it's UEFA, who knows?
Well, fair enough, guess not. Very strange decision by the footballing leagues and by UEFA, but it's a decision they have come to, and one that I am sure will have some very interesting outcomes in the near future, that's for sure. Anyway, that just about covers our announcement today regarding the footballing landscape across Europe. From all the guys here at State Sports News, thank you very much for watching, and we will see you again next time. So then guys, welcome back to what is now going to be my final experiment here with FM20. As State Sports News would have just introduced, this experiment is going to be a transfer embargo experiment. In other words, what we have done, and as I'll explain as we go through this, that we have placed a 15-year transfer embargo on every team in the top division of one of the 5 major European leagues. In other words, the Premier League, the Bundesliga, La Liga, Serie A and Ligue 1 have all had a transfer embargo placed on all the sides in those divisions for 15 years. The reason being is I want to see quite what can happen in Football Manager if, with all of these big teams having this embargo placed on them, will smaller sides from the leagues below, once they get promoted and they then have the ability to buy and sell players, will they be able to overcome the big sides in those divisions normally and maybe become new dominant superpowers in European football? Only time will tell with this experiment, but I'm hoping we may see some crazy stuff happening quite quickly due to the embargoes being in place. Now guys though, before we get into the experiment itself, if you do enjoy this video today, please do chuck a like on the video. It really does help the channel out. And also let me know down in the comment section what you think is the craziest thing to come out of this experiment. I haven't looked fully at what happens throughout all of it, but I know at certain points there are some small teams that do start to do pretty well from what I've seen just at a quick glance. Additionally guys, we are going to go in 5-year jumps, and we'll probably come back at years 5, 10, 15, because of course that's when the transfer embargo ends, and then we will probably look as well at year 20 in the game to see what happens once the big teams in Europe are then allowed to spend money once again, to see maybe they reclaim their positions on the top of the European pile. We'll have to see quite what they do, but as I say, do let me know down in the comments what the craziest thing is you think you've seen in this video today. Finally as well guys, before we get going, if you do enjoy this and you want to see some more of my content, whether that be my FM20 save with Maidstone United, the Stones Rolling On Up series, or any of my upcoming FM21 content, whether that being my beta save with Manchester United or any experiments which I do have planned for once the game is released, then do make sure to subscribe to LS Plays FM and keep up to everything that I do here on YouTube. But guys, let's get into this experiment and take a look at what's going on in this database. So guys, we're now here on the database just at the very beginning of the experiment, just so I can show you a few of the sides and the embargoes that have been put in place so you can get a bit of a better idea of exactly what has happened. So if we go, for example, just to look at the Premier League, so let's go to say Arsenal here. It's worth noting we are on the 2019-20 database, so just the regular teams. I haven't got an updated database with the new promoted sides and so on. So it's going to be all of last year's teams in the division. If we go and look at Arsenal and look at their general information, you can see Arsenal here are a rich club with a transfer ban until the 10th of June 2034. So as I've just said, 15 years. And then if we flick through, Villa's the same, Bournemouth, all the teams in the Prem are exactly the same. They've all got this transfer ban in place. So if we go all the way through, just so you can have a look and just to check and so on. So as I say, all 20 teams in the Prem have this in place. And then also I'll just show you just so you can see as well, for example, with the Bundesliga, again, exactly the same. If we go to Augsburg, general information, they've got the same embargo in place until, once again, the 10th of June. So I'll just flick through all of these just so you can have a look as well. And then this is the same for La Liga, Liga and Serie A as well. So I say all of those big teams and those big leagues have those embargoes in place. But guys, let's get to year 5 and see quite what's going on after 5 years of big European teams not being able to sign players. So here we are, guys, now ready for what is year 5 of the embargo experiment. We're now here in 2024. It is the 31st of May, so it's the end of the season. And let's get straight into this and find out what has gone on in the big European leagues. Now we've had 5 years of this embargo in place. So if we go to our leagues in focus, we'll go first of all to the Premier League. We can see some of the leagues on the screen at the moment. Let's go to the Prem first of all, and we can see Liverpool are still champions of English football. It seems to be that currently anyway, the big teams are still dominating English football anyway. So Liverpool have won the most recent season. Other than Southampton being up there in Europa League, there's no real big shocks in those top 7 places. Let's have a look at our past winners. So past winners are Liverpool and City. That is it. And in terms of the top 3, it's just your general top kind of 6 sides you'd expect to see. Your Liverpool, City, Tottenham, Chelsea. In fact, actually, that's all that's got in there, actually. It's just those 4. There's no other teams that have managed to creep into the top 3 of the English League at all over this period of time. Let's just take a look, though, at our transfers for the league. Has there been any major kind of signings while in the league? Currently, the biggest signing this season has been Fulham signing Myron Boadu. I think his name is from RZ for 39 million. That's the biggest signing in the entirety of English football this season. Says a lot, the fact that only promoted Fulham, Leeds, Forest, etc. are the teams buying players because they haven't got that transfer embargo in place. So obviously that's the Prem. I mean, the Prem seems pretty normal other than the fact that the big teams aren't buying players. But other than that, it's pretty much business as usual. Let's take a look at some of the other leagues. Let's see with La Liga. Is that the same as we'd expect? It certainly is. Real Madrid, Barcelona winning the previous few years' worth of La Ligas. Atleti are still there up in 3rd. And in this case, it's Sociedad up there in 4th place. And I can't see any big teams really pushing the Europa League. I mean, you've got Girona and Sporting Gijón, who are, I believe, they're second tier sides normally, I think. Girona are, yes, they start the first season in the 2nd division, do Girona, and I think Sporting do as well. Yeah, they do as well. So both these teams got promoted in year 1, and they're the only 2 which are really trying to push those top 7 teams at the moment. Again, any big transfers at the moment? No, the biggest transfer in the league is a £5.5 million signing for Sporting. So it says a lot, doesn't it, really, at the moment, that big teams can't spend money, so the biggest signing is 5.5 mil. Let's have a look. What about Serie A? I can see Inter have won the most recent, and yet still, as we'd expect, Inter and Juve are the 2 dominant sides. So currently, leagues are business as usual. There's no kind of small sides anywhere near the top half of the division at the moment either, it would seem. So Serie A is very much no change there at all. Transfer-wise, the biggest signing was for Livorno, for Mustafa Bundu, who joined Livorno from Middlesbrough for 5.75 mil. So again, a very small signing. Very much a recurring theme at the moment, it has to be said. What about Liga? Is it still PSG? It certainly is still PSG. They've won every division so far, all 5. And what about the Liga table? Is there any teeny tiny teams floating around the top 6? No, there is not. In fact, I think is Lens a promoted side? Yeah, Lens are the only team there who are kind of been promoted and actually pushing anywhere near even the top half. But other than that, there is no promoted sides in the division pushing at all. Transfer-wise, there's been no big signings. The biggest one is Guingamp, who have made a couple of decent signings for a few mil here and there. But otherwise, there's been no big signings in Liga whatsoever. What about the Bundesliga? Is the Bundesliga any different? Nope, it's still Bayern, just having fun, just doing Bayern things, that's for sure. Oh, actually, Stuttgart are bucking the trend. Stuttgart are promoted side. They start the first year in the Bundesliga 2 or the Bundesliga 2, and they have got themselves Champions League football. So the first sign of a team actually kind of being able to use the transfer embargo to their advantage is Stuttgart managing to make the top 4 of the German Bundesliga after only 5 years. If actually, they've done it for the past 3 years in a row. They finished third in 2021-22, second the year before, and they've just finished fourth this season. So they are really doing themselves proud at the moment, Stuttgart are. They really are. How about transfers? In fact, actually, Stuttgart are really bucking the trend as well because they're making big signings as well, like Fulham and Leeds were in the Prem. So nice to see that from Stuttgart, the fact they are making some decent signings. Maybe we could be looking at a new powerhouse in German football, quite possibly. We have to wait and see. And of interest, actually, talk about transfers. Let's just take a look at the world transfers. With the big leagues such as the Prem and stuff being not allowed to sign players, what's the leading transfer in world football currently in the game? So at the moment, it's a Chinese side in Beijing Guangdong, I think it is how you pronounce their name, have signed Diego Carlos from Sevilla for what was a £51 million fee. You had Alvaro Morata, which was already a pre-agreed deal, which is the reason why that's gone through, despite the fact Atletico obviously have that transfer embargo, because it was arranged beforehand, that still goes through. But otherwise, you have Ziyech going to Chelsea, but currently the biggest European signing, which has happened since the game began, is Myron Boadu, who we've already seen going to Fulham for £39 million. Otherwise, it's just Beijing Guangdong in China just splashing money out for fun. That certainly is quite funny to see, just kind of how dominant the Chinese sides are in just spending money now that the big European sides aren't allowed to pay anything. Still though, I think we definitely need to have a look at year 10 and see quite what's going to happen to those smaller sides which have been kind of pushing up the leagues, mainly Stuttgart, and seeing what is going to happen in 10 years after this embargo has been put in place. So I'll see you in a few seconds at the 10-year point in our database. So we're now here ready for year 10 now of our database. So let's take a look and see what is going on in the major leagues across European football now we're 10 years in. So let's get into our leagues in focus. So at the moment, I can't see any big winners of the leagues, which would be a bit unsurprising. So let's go first of all to the Prem. So Man City have won the league. You got Fulham and Forest actually pushing the top 4. And in fact, Leeds are up there as well in 5th place. And oh my, oh wow, we've got an interesting winner of the Premier League in the 2027-28 season. Fulham won the Premier League. Unbelievable, the fact that Fulham are the first team to do it. I didn't expect it to be Fulham. I thought it'd be like a Leeds or someone, to be honest. But fair play to Fulham. They've managed to do it. And they did it within, how long did they do it in? What, 8 seasons? So fair play to them. I can't quite believe they managed to do it, but they have done. Fulham are English champions, and you've got Nottingham Forest and Leeds as well up there being real contenders as well. I mean, look at that. They all finished within, 7 points off the top were Leeds and Forest and Fulham. So fair play to them. So a very good sign for the little teams in the leagues, that's for sure. Out of interest, we've obviously City still win the league. What type of team are they playing? If we have a look at their squad, so they've still got Ederson there, 35-year-old Ederson, a 35-year-old John Stones. I imagine must have no pace. Actually, no, he's still got a little bit, but he's not brilliant. You got a region, I presume, in Tipple, yeah. You got Laporta is still there at 35. Again, he's not got much in the way of pace. You got a 32-year-old Angelino, who's played 59 games, Angelino. Flipping it. You got the youngster Tommy Doyle. He normally never gets a shot at all in the City team. And actually, he looks really good. He looks quite good when he's actually had a lot of game time, does old Tommy Doyle. You got a Phil Foden, who I imagine must be insane. Yeah, Foden looks disgustingly good with his 101 caps at 29. You got Ben Knight, who's a very good youngster. I've never seen him come through at City before, so he's obviously come through. You got Morgan Rogers, again another player who's obviously come through their academy. And you got Sterling, who's now 34, who's still, even at 34, looks nuts. Wow, I can't quite believe he's still this good at this age. He's still got 14 pace at 34 years of age. Fair play to Sterling. And up front for City is still Jesus, who still, even at 32, still looks very, very good. So to be fair, that City team is still very, very decent, but I wonder what's going to happen by the time we get to the year 15, when the majority of those real-life players are going to probably have retired. Other than probably likes of Foden and Doyle, you'd imagine the vast majority of those players will probably be gone. So it will very much be a regen-dominated team by that point. Still, it's good to see the majority of that team is still pretty much intact, even 10 years in. But let's have a look at the rest of the leagues across Europe. So let's have a look at the Liga first of all. I mean, we can see Real and Barca and Atleti are still the top three, and it's still being dominated by Real and Barcelona in terms of winning La Liga. But Girona, who we mentioned at the 5-year point, have made it into the top four. So we may be starting to see that they might start doing a little bit better. This is the first time they've broken into that top four. Before that, they're only a top half side. So maybe we might be seeing a changing of the guard, possibly in La Liga. That would be good to see someone finally topple the big boys over there in Spain. Now, what about, though, Serie A? So in Serie A, we've had some different winners, but no teeny tiny teams. You've had the likes of Fiorentina, Roma, Milan and Inter Milan all winning Serie A. So some different winners. No Juventus, mind you. So Juventus seem to have dropped off. In fact, Juventus have really dropped off. What the hell has happened to Juve? They're down in 14th place. That is dreadful. I know obviously they're going to have no Ronaldo anymore, but wow, that is a hell of a decline there from Juve. So without buying players, Juve, it would seem, would be very, very just average, it would seem. So Juve really struggling now in Serie A 10 years later. But you've got Benevento and you've got Frosinone actually, who both start as teams in Serie B. So it looks like they've done themselves pretty well to get themselves up and into the top 7. In fact, I just saw that Benevento managed by Edin Dzeko, which, I don't know, I love that. I love the fact that he's their manager. Very, very random. But still, good to see that there's some Italian sides starting to push the traditional top 7 as well over there. Now, let's have a look at Ligue 1, and we'll come to Germany last, because Germany was the one where Stuttgart were really challenging at the top, so we'll leave Germany till the very end. Ligue 1, though, well, there's no more PSG dominance. It's now Olympique Lyon. For whatever reason, Lyon are the dominant side now in France, which is different. Didn't expect to see that, but that is what has happened. So Lyon are up there, and Guingamp actually are the team second place in France, who do start as a second division side, and they've been up in the top kind of 6, 7 for the past 5 years of the game, and they are now up there in second place. They've got themselves Champions League football for next season. PSG, mind you, are down there in 11th spot. Wow, PSG have dropped off as well, haven't they? They're doing a Juve. I mean, they haven't won in the last few years. They had a third last year, and this year an 11th place. Now, though, that's obviously France. The big one I am interested in seeing now is Germany. We've already seen that England has had its first promoted team winning the league. What about the Bundesliga? Stuttgart were the best challengers of anyone. How have they done? They have started becoming quite dominant over there in Germany. Have Stuttgart. They've just won the most recent year. They've won the last 3 in a row, so fair play to Stuttgart. And they've also won 4 of the last 5. In fact, actually, Bochum, who start as a second division side, are up there in second place. So the top 2 sides in Germany are both teams which don't have the embargo and started as second division sides. And in fact, Hamburg as well are up there in 5th. So Germany especially is just doing brilliantly from these transfer embargoes. Still, Dortmund and Bayern are still up there in the top 4. So it looks like they're still competing. But Leipzig, I've just noticed, are really far down in 12th. So certainly having a bit of an interesting effect on German football. Let's take a look at the transfers. Let's see if there's been any more kind of insane transfers or not since last time. Of course, the biggest one from a non-embargoed team in the leagues we're looking at was 39 mil from Fulham. Is that any higher now? So if we sort by the fees, the highest now is still Fulham, but for a bigger fee for, oh no, how am I going to pronounce that? Madalan Baloka, is that, from Bochum, who moved to Fulham for 63 million. The highest of any player is Oscar, who moved from one Chinese club in Guangzhou Evergrande to Shanghai for, what is that, 55, rising to 66. But otherwise, it's this Baloka player who is a regen and looks very good. Wow, okay, he looks insane. Does this guy at Fulham? No wonder they actually have been pushing the league. He is nutty. Look at those, all those green attributes, and he's only 24 as well. I think he might do pretty well for Fulham, to be honest, this guy. But that is currently our leading transfer of our non-embargoed sides. So I think we now need to go to season 15 and see if any of these teams which have been kind of challenging the top of the league or winning the top of the league in Fulham and Leeds and Stuttgart and so on, and see if they can become dominant now at year 15 of our database. Let's take a look and find out. So guys, here we are now at year 15 of our experiment, and now what is the end of the transfer embargoes for all of the big clubs across Europe. Of course, the embargo is due to end on the 10th of June. We are at the 31st of May 2034, so the embargo will be lifted in about 2 weeks in game. So this is the final point before the big clubs can start spending money again. So after 15 years of these clubs not being allowed to spend a penny, let's see quite what's happened in these leagues and what on earth has gone on with all those smaller teams that were either pushing or even winning the top divisions in Europe. So let's go to our leagues in focus. And okay, the Premier League looks very different right now. What the hell is going on there? I can already see Leeds are currently the champions of the Prem, Fulham in second, Birmingham in third, Blackburn in fourth, Forest in sixth, Ipswich in seventh, Derby in 8th and Brentford in 10th with Champions League football. What the hell has gone on in there? Right, let's open up the Premier League and get a bit of a better view of it. So at the moment, we've got the only arguably top 6 side still in the top 6 is Liverpool, who are sitting there in 5th. United are down there in 9th. You got Arsenal and Chelsea down there in the bottom half. And it looks like Man City may actually not even be in the league anymore. Where the hell are City? Man City, yeah, City down in the Championship. They got relegated last year and they're in the Championship. They finished 6th. Did they go up out of the playoffs? No, they did not. Oh dear, Man City. As a Man U fan, oh, that is wonderful to see. Oh, even Spurs. Spurs are down there as well. They've just been promoted from the Championship. Wow. The Prem certainly is looking very different right now. So, of course, the last time we looked at the Prem was the end of the 2029 season when City actually won. So, within 5 years of winning the Prem, they have been relegated. And after them, it was Blackburn, who have won the first league title since when they won it in, 95 was it? They won the Prem, I think, before? I can never remember. Was it 95? Yeah, the year of my birth, 1995. So the first time they've won the league in almost 30 years. You then had Leeds won it in 2031 and again in 32. Then Fulham once again, and now Leeds have won it for a third time in 4 years. Oh, it must be good being a Leeds fan in this then, that's for sure. Flipping heck. I'll tell you what as well, we haven't had a look at it. We will have a look in a minute at the European games. So in other words, a Champions League and Europa League and see what teams are winning that. We'll go for all the big leagues first though. But my oh my, the Premier League certainly looks different, that is for sure. Right, let's have a look next at La Liga. So I can see Sporting Gijón are up there now, and Real Madrid have really dropped off. So have we had any different winners? Barcelona, in fact, yes, we have. Sporting Gijón are the first team outside of either Barcelona or Real Madrid to win La Liga. They won it in 2030-31. Otherwise, it has been Barcelona dominated. They have just won the most recent year, unsurprisingly. But flipping heck, Real Madrid have dropped off. They're down there now in 9th. And that's kind of what they've been up to. They've been kind of floating around the top 7. And this has been their worst year by a distance. To be fair, though, La Liga itself doesn't look overly that dissimilar from what we're used to. Of course, Barca and Atleti and even Bilbao and Valencia is still up there. It's just Sporting Gijón being a very impressive side and having benefited from that transfer embargo. Now, what about Serie A? I can see that Inter have won once again. And in fact, Inter are by far the dominant side in Italy. So it seems, even with a transfer embargo, Inter Milan are just still able to just pump out players and just still dominate the Italian leagues, it would seem. You've got quite a few smaller sides, though, up there in the top half of the leagues. Now, you've got Virtus and Tella, who I know definitely don't start in Serie A. In fact, yeah, they actually even went down to Serie C at one point in the game, but now they find themselves up there in the top 5 of Italian football. You've got Pescara and Spezia and Perugia and Frosinone. So some very small sides up there competing around the top half of the table. But realistically, though, Italy still seems very much as we're used to with Inter being dominant. You've got Juve and Napoli, though, really struggling down the bottom of the league. I wonder now that they're going to have money again if they'll be able to push themselves back up to the top of the table when we come back in a few years' time. Now, what about Ligue 1? So it's still the Lyon show, it would seem. Lyon have won every division since PSG did in 24-25. So they've won the last 9 Ligue 1s in a row. Lyon are certainly the new version of PSG. I presume because of their youth talents, they must just be pumping out regens like crazy because they are destroying Ligue 1, that's for sure. Of course, the last league we need to look at as well is the Bundesliga. So last time we looked, Stuttgart were the team to beat. They had become disgustingly good, and actually they have finally been overcome by Bayern once again. But before that, was Stuttgart a dominant force? They'd won so many titles in a row there, had Stuttgart, but they've finally been toppled by Bayern. But then I love the fact that the top four, excluding Bayern, is Stuttgart, Hamburg and Bochum, all three promoted sides. So definitely this embargo has helped German football become a lot more competitive, it would seem, or at least kind of end the reigns of Bayern, Dortmund, Schalke, Leipzig, etc. The kind of traditional top six or so in Germany has kind of just disintegrated, and now you've got the likes of Stuttgart, Hamburg and Bochum. Certainly a different look, that is, in German football. But one of the big things we haven't looked at so far is European football, so the Champions League and Europa League. Now, I imagine Stuttgart probably were in it, so let's have a look. So we've got the Champions League groups here. Let's have a look at the Champions League itself. So if we go to our past winners, I can already see that Benfica have finally won a Champions League after so long. They've actually managed to finally win it in, what is it, about 60 years since they would have won it last. But before that, we had Stuttgart winning the Champions League. We had Leeds winning the Champions League. Stuttgart again. Then you had Man City, Lyon, Barcelona, Bayern, Madrid, City, Liverpool, Bayern and Barcelona. You even had Celtic. Celtic reached a Champions League final after only 14 years in the game. How the hell have they managed that? I mean, they did get beaten by Stuttgart, but I love the fact that Leeds are up there, and you got Celtic, and you got Ajax and Porto and Benfica. That is wonderful to see. Surprising though, only two of the teams that have won the Champions League are the teams that have been promoted from those lower leagues. So might be interesting the next few years if any others do manage to win it. What about the Europa League? So let's have a look at the Europa League. So apparently Brentford have just won the Europa League. Let's have a look at the past winners. You've got Brentford, who beat Sporting Gijón from Spain. You had Forest won it last year. You had Celtic won it a couple of years ago. Forest again. Bochum, Lyon, Atleti, Stuttgart, Fiorentina, Sevilla, Chelsea, United, Tottenham, Madrid and United won it in the first year in the game. But you've got some really interesting sides as well being runners-up. You've got Famalicão, I think it is, from Portugal. You've got Girona up there. You've got Leeds. PSG actually reached the European final. You've got Leipzig, Valencia, Fiorentina, Arsenal, and a lot of kind of traditional sides you expect to see up there kind of did quite well until the most recent seasons when Stuttgart won it really the earliest in 26-27, but then you've got the likes of Bochum, Leeds, etc. all starting to push up there. So European football definitely is looking a lot different to what we're used to, especially with the dominant side in Stuttgart really pushing through. Let's have a look as well just at the transfers before we get on to the 20th season. So if we have a look at our transfers and then go to our leading transfers, who now has the leading one? Because of course after this season, the big clubs across Europe will be able to start spending money. So all that money they basically saved up for 15 years, they can be allowed to start spending. So at this point, the biggest signing that has happened in world football was done by Blackburn Rovers in 2032, so 2 years ago in game, and it was for Borja Moreno from Villarreal when they spent £92 million on what is a left winger, a very decent left winger. I wouldn't necessarily say he's £92 million worth of left winger, but a good player nonetheless. But it'll be very interesting once we get to year 20, which will be in a few seconds, and seeing if that record gets smashed by the big clubs and they can actually start spending money. I reckon it will do, but it'll be interesting to see by how much. Speaking of that, guys, that rounds up ourselves here in year 15 and brings the transfer embargoes to an end. So let's get to year 20 and find out if the big clubs can start dominating European football once again when they're allowed to spend some money. So here we are, and it's now year 20 of our transfer embargo experiment. We've officially now had 5 years in the game where big clubs have been once again allowed to start buying players. So now that they can do, let's see how European football is shaping up. Will those smaller sides that were dominating football, will they have now dropped back off and the big teams have returned? So let's go to our leagues in focus and see what's going on. So straight away I can see in the Premier League that some of the big boys have returned, but Blackburn Rovers are currently sitting top of the Prem as the big boys in English football. Let's go to the Premier League. We can see that Liverpool finished second in the end, and even United and City are back up there. So City, of course, got relegated when we looked only a few years back, but they're back now in the Premier League and they're back doing pretty well. Let's have a look at the past winners. So it looks like after Leeds were doing very well with their 3 trophies in 4 years, they haven't won it since, and instead it's Fulham are the main dominant side in the league. But Man City, after being relegated, have come back to win the league once again, and even Blackburn have got another trophy. Out of interest, City, what the hell happened then? So they got promoted in the year after when we looked at year 15, so they got promoted in year 16. They then finished 11th and then won the league and then finished 6th. So they are just such a weird side, are Man City. They really are. I don't understand that at all. I'm interested actually, what are they doing in terms of how much they were spending? I guess they must have spent a lot of money to just bounce back that quickly. Let's have a quick look at their transfer history. So yes, okay, this season they spent over 300 mil. The previous year they spent 250 mil. This was the year I believe they won the league. They only spent 145. But the year before that, they spent 104. And in the first season when they were able to buy players, they spent 322 million as well. So yeah, they did spend quite a bit of money, did Man City, to be fair to them. Now though, of course, that is the Prem. And we can see that currently, at this point where we're ending, Blackburn are the big boys. But Fulham and Leeds are still very, very good. Liverpool are kind of returned back up the top. City and United as well. Chelsea, mind you, got relegated. Despite being able to spend money, Chelsea got relegated to the Championship. So unlucky there, Chelsea fans. Right, what else is going on across European football though? La Liga is back to having Barca as the big boys, it would seem. My goodness, they destroyed La Liga this season. 102 points. They've won every year since we looked 5 years ago. And Barca are well and truly back on top. It's my note to note that Sporting Gijon and Girona are still up there in the top 4 despite the other clubs being allowed to spend money. But Real Madrid is back as well. They kind of really have been bounced all over the place, but they seem to kind of reassert themselves back in the top 4, have Madrid. So kind of back to what we're used to seeing, but still a little bit different because of course Girona and Sporting Gijon are now up there as decent sides. Now though, what about in Italy? So Serie A, we can see the most recent winner is AC Milan. You've got Inter still up there, Napoli. But to be fair, we've got Spezia and we've got Virtus Entella, 2 of the sides we mentioned when we looked in year 15 that were kind of starting to push higher up, have got themselves into the top 5 of Italian football. None of those smaller sides have won Serie A, mind you, but we have had some different winners in AC Milan and Atalanta, as well as Inter Milan still doing their dominance in Italy. But overall, Italy doesn't look too different to what we're used to. AC Milan, Inter, Napoli up there. I mean, Juve is still struggling, mind you. Even with being able to spend money, they're still down there in 9th. But the other sides are back at it, that is for sure. But it's still nice to see Spezia and Virtus Entella up there doing well, it has to be said. Now, what about in Ligue 1 though? Of course, we were used to Lyon show, but finally Lyon have been overcome by, of course, PSG. They finally were allowed to spend money and they seem to finally bridge the gap to Lyon. I mean, they still won another 4 titles in a row, but PSG have just won the most recent one in 2038-39. So it was, okay, wow, PSG got a ton of points this season. They did very, very well. You've still got Lorient up there, though, to be fair. Of course, they started as a second division side, a team in Ligue 2 at the beginning of the game. So it's good to see a team of that size is still up there in the top 3 of French football, despite the embargoes now having been lifted. But Ligue 1 kind of still looks what we're used to seeing, it has to be said. PSG winning, Lyon doing well. We're all used to that in French football. Now, though, we have to go to the Bundesliga, by far, alongside the Premier League, the most interesting league, because we've had some very varied results. Now, with the Bundesliga, though, it looks like Stuttgart and Bayern are still battling it out. Bayern having won the most recent one, but before that, Stuttgart won all 4 after we finished looking at year 15. So Stuttgart still do seem to be utterly dominant, really. Let's have a look at the league table. So Stuttgart finished 2nd this year, a point behind Bayern. You then had Schalke, who got themselves back up there in the top 3. But then it's Bochum, Hertha Berlin, Hamburg and Borussia Dortmund. So overall, there are some smaller sides in there. Stuttgart, Bochum and Hamburg, who we've mentioned previously. But the kind of the traditional good sides in Germany, the Bayern, Schalke, Hertha, Dortmund, etc. are still very good. My note to know that RB Leipzig, I'm sure a lot of German fans will be pleased to see this, have been relegated alongside Wolfsburg. So it seems those big teams have really dropped off due to the embargo. But of course that covers all of the leagues. What about the Champions League? Because what we saw last time, only a few years ago in the game, were some of the smaller sides were starting to do quite well. So let's have a look at the Champions League. So here we go. Let's go to the profile. So we've just had the most recent final. Stuttgart have beaten Leeds in the Champions League final. Let's have a look at our past winners for it though. So of course we've got Stuttgart and Leeds, one we just mentioned. Fulham won it last season against Stuttgart as well. The year before that, Barcelona beat Fulham. The year before that, Stuttgart beat Barcelona. So just a bit of a merry-go-round between Stuttgart, Fulham and Barca. But before that, we had Lyon winning it against Leeds. So Leeds won it quite early on, and then they've just been really unlucky since, just making 2 finals and winning neither of them. So I have to feel a little bit for Leeds fans there, but they still did get a Champions League win during this experiment, so they still at least got one of them under their belt. What about the Europa League though? Because the Europa League was all over the place. The most recent one has been a Manchester derby when Man U beat Man City 1-0. And let's have a look at the past winners. And okay, the Europa League's a bit weird, that has to be said. Man U win the latest, that's pretty, standard. Leeds won it the year before against Hertha Berlin. Hamburg beat Atleti. You then got Birmingham having beat Sporting Gijón, and Forest at the earliest one beating Inter Milan. So some really weird teams in there in the finals and winning the competition. But I do love the fact that some of those sides up there, especially like Birmingham and Forest and Hamburg winning European competitions. I do quite like seeing that. What about, though, the transfers? Because, of course, the highest one we saw just before we finished year 15 was £92 million by Blackburn Rovers. I'm expecting that to have been smashed out the water, really. Let's have a look at our leading transfers. So, has it been beaten? If we sort it by fee, it has. Quite significantly, there's been how many more? 5 transfers higher in that time. The highest being made by Manchester United, only of 123 million. I thought it might be higher, but to be fair, that still is very, very high. In Vinicius Rodolfo, signed from Blackburn by Man U. He's a striker and a very good striker. Wow, those physicals. He looks pretty nuts, actually. He really does. Although saying that his goal-scoring ratio for Man is not brilliant for a £100 million player, but still a very good-looking player. You got Birmingham City having made a £114 million purchase, and Barcelona with a signing over 100 million as well from Porto. Still, I thought those signings might actually be higher, but regardless, it does look like the big clubs, once they're allowed to spend money again, especially Man U and Man City, because I see City up there in 4th, have started spending their cash. And probably why they managed to start competing once again at the top of their divisions. Still though, guys, that wraps up year 20 and the end of our experiment. So then, guys, that just about wraps up our experiment here today with the transfer embargoes. I think we can safely say European football, if it had this type of embargoes in place, certainly looks like a totally different landscape, that is for sure. Now, of course, I'm sure some of you might be asking if you can have a copy of this database, and by all means, yes, you can. There'll be a link down in the description for you to access it. I'll probably have it hosted up on Dropbox for you to download and access. I'll put a link for both the database here, so the save file at the end of the 20 seasons, and also for the editor file. So if you want, you can start a brand new game with all the embargoes in place. So feel free to download a copy of that. If you have any trouble accessing anything like that, let me know down in the comments and I'll try and help you out. But I think we can safely say though, guys, this has shown that if the big clubs aren't allowed to spend money, then some smaller clubs will just appear out of nowhere and just steal those top spots from them. And I love the fact that's happened. The fact that likes of Blackburn and Forest and Leeds have returned to their glory days is really, really cool to see. And even the likes of Stuttgart over in Germany and Hamburg doing really well is really brilliant to see. And I still can't believe the fact that Sporting Gijón here in Spain managed to win a La Liga title and beat Barca and Real to that. Really fascinating stuff to see. I love FM and be able to see this type of stuff happening in the game. And of course, with it being in Football Manager and Football Manager 20, this is the last experiment that will be happening in this version of the game. Of course, I mentioned at the very beginning of the video, guys, there will be FM21 experiments coming. I have 1 or 2 ideas already planned for when the game gets released in November. So hopefully you'll be able to see a few of those when they get released in a few weeks or months' time. Hopefully, guys, you have enjoyed this video today. If you have, then please do chuck a like on it, because it really does help the channel out. And also, I say, let me know down in the comments, as I mentioned earlier in the video, let me know what you thought is the craziest thing you've seen in this video today. And also, let me know down in the comments section as well some ideas for experiments you'd like me to possibly do once FM21 comes out as well. Because I'm happy to try any ideas really, because I do love doing experiments in Football Manager. Of course, as well, guys, if you're looking forward to seeing any more of my content, whether that being the FM20 save I'm doing currently with Maidstone, with the stones rolling on up, or any of my upcoming FM21 content, then do make sure to subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with everything here on LS Plays FM. I'll also mention as well, guys, that what should be linked next to me here is a video regarding FM21 and some interesting sides you could possibly manage once the beta comes out. It's one of my most recent videos, so if you want to click on that, just use the link next to me and it will take you to that video. But guys, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again next time.